Sarah McKenzie flinched as the whispers followed her through the muddy main street of Naco, Arizona Territory, 1883. The morning after she buried her third unborn child in 4 years, and the vultures were already circling, their words sharper than any knife. Poor Sam, a woman's voice carried on the wind. Married to a woman who can't even give him a son. Third one gone, another added. Maybe the good Lord's trying to tell her something. Sarah kept her head high, though each word pierced her heart like a thorn. Her hands trembled as she clutched her basket tighter, the simple task of buying flour and sugar suddenly feeling like scaling a mountain. The general store stood only 20 paces ahead, but it might as well have been 20 miles with the gauntlet of judgment she had to walk through. Hope Blackburn had been Sarah's name once, before she married Samuel York 3 years ago. Hope, what a cruel joke that name had become. She'd lost so much of it with each tiny grave they'd dug. "Morning, Mrs. York," Mr. Jenkins said as she entered his store, his voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. "Terrible sorry about your situation." "Thank you," Sarah replied quietly, placing her basket on the counter. "Just the usual supplies today." Mr. Jenkins nodded, beginning to gather her items. "You know, my sister had troubles like yours. Never did have children. Some women just aren't meant for motherhood, I suppose." Sarah bit her tongue until she tasted copper. 2 pounds of flour, please." The bell above the door jingled, and Samuel York's tall frame filled the doorway. At 30 years old, he was the most respected rancher in the county, with shoulders broadened by hard work and a face weathered by the Arizona sun. His dark hair curled at the nape of his neck beneath his wide-brimmed hat, and his blue eyes found Sarah's immediately. "There you are," he said, crossing to her side. His hand came to rest at the small of her back, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Mr. Jenkins or the 2 women browsing fabric nearby. "I thought we agreed you'd rest today." "We needed supplies," Sarah answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam's jaw tightened as he noted the red-rimmed evidence of her tears. "I'll handle this," he told her gently, then turned to Mr. Jenkins with steel in his gaze. "We'll take our usual order, and whatever else my wife requires." Mr. Jenkins nodded quickly, suddenly very interested in measuring flour precisely. "Did you hear about the Wilsons' new baby?" one of the women said to her companion, loud enough to ensure Sarah heard. "They're 4th. Some women are just blessed with fertility, I suppose." Sarah's hands trembled so badly she dropped her handkerchief. Before she could retrieve it, Sam had scooped it up, pressed it back into her palm, and covered her hand with his own. "Mrs. Peterson," Sam said, his voice deceptively calm as he addressed the gossiping woman. "I trust your husband recovered from that gambling debt I helped him settle last month? Wouldn't want the whole town knowing how close you came to losing your home." Mrs. Peterson's face flushed crimson. She mumbled something unintelligible and hurried out the door, her companion scurrying after her. "Your order's ready, Mr. York," Jenkins said, sliding the parcels across the counter. Sam paid without another word, gathered their supplies, and guided Sarah outside. The whispers followed them down the street, but Sam's arm around her shoulders held her steady. "Don't listen to them," he murmured. "Not a one of them is worth your tears." Back at their ranch 3 miles outside town, Sam helped Sarah down from their wagon. The modest 2-story house sat nestled against a backdrop of rolling grassland and distant mountains. They'd built it together after their wedding, Sam insisting on extra windows to let the light find you, no matter where you are in the house. Once inside, Sarah moved woodenly through the familiar routine of putting away supplies. Sam watched her from the doorway, his heart breaking at the hollow look in her eyes. "Sarah," he said softly, crossing to her. "Look at me." She continued arranging cans on the shelf, her movements mechanical. "Sarah," he repeated, gently taking the tin of coffee from her hands and setting it aside. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I need you to hear me. I heard enough in town," she whispered. "Then hear me instead," Sam said firmly. "You are my wife, my home, my heart. No matter what comes, no matter what doesn't, that won't change." "I failed you," Sarah said, the words she'd been holding back for days finally breaking free. 3 babies, Sam. 3 little souls we'll never know. What kind of woman can't even stop?" Sam interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. "You haven't failed at anything. This isn't your fault." "Then whose fault is it?" she cried, pulling away from him. Mrs. Peterson has 4 healthy children. Mary Wilson just had her 4th. Even Lydia Thompson, who everyone said was too frail to bear children, has twins now. But me? I can't give you even one living child. Sarah. Sam tried to reach for her, but she backed away. I saw the way Mr. Jenkins looked at me. The way they all look at me. Like I'm broken. And they're right. No, they're not, Sam insisted. And I don't give a damn what any of them think. But you should have children, Sam, Sarah said, tears streaming freely now. Sons to help you with the ranch. A daughter with your smile. You deserve that. The only thing I deserve is what I already have you, Sam said. The day I married you, I didn't make vows to some future children. I made promises to you. For better or worse, in sickness and in health. This is the worst part, but we'll get through it together. He crossed to her, and this time when he pulled her into his arms, she didn't resist. Her tears soaked his shirt as he held her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other rubbing soothing circles on her back. You're still my home, he whispered against her hair. Nothing will ever change that. For the first time since the bleeding had started 3 days ago, Sarah allowed herself to truly cry, not the quiet tears she'd shed in private, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. Sam held her through it all, his own eyes damp, his heart breaking for her pain. When her tears finally subsided, Sam led her to their bedroom and helped her lie down. He pulled the quilt over her and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Rest now, he told her. I'll be here when you wake up. The doctor had said she needed time to heal, both her body and her spirit. Sam intended to give her that time, to shield her from the cruel tongues in town, to remind her daily that she was enough, exactly as she was. As Sarah drifted into exhausted sleep, Sam sat beside her, holding her hand. He would move heaven and earth to take away her pain if he could. Since he couldn't, he would stand beside her while she weathered it. That's what he'd promised on their wedding day, and Samuel York was a man who kept his promises. The following weeks passed in a fog for Sarah. She moved through her daily tasks like a ghost, cooking meals she barely tasted, cleaning rooms she hardly saw. Sam tried everything to coax a smile from her, bringing wildflowers from the range, reading aloud from her favorite books in the evenings, even attempting to bake bread himself, a disaster that should have made her laugh, but barely registered. When Sunday came, Sarah refused to go to church. I can't face them, she said, staring out the window as Sam dressed in his Sunday best. Then we won't go, Sam replied without hesitation. No, Sarah shook her head. You go? Someone should represent the York family. Sarah, please, Sam, she interrupted. I need some time alone. Reluctantly, Sam agreed. He kissed her goodbye, promising to return straight after the service, and rode into town with worry etched on his face. Once he was gone, Sarah moved through the empty house, touching the furniture they'd chosen together, the curtains she'd sewn, the rocking chair Sam had made for them. It sat in the corner of what would have been the nursery, a room that remained empty except for that single piece of furniture. She sank into the chair, setting it into gentle motion, her hand resting on her flat stomach. Empty, like this room. Empty, like her arms should have been full by now. The creak of wagon wheels drew her attention. Visitors were rare at the York Ranch, especially on a Sunday morning when most folks were at church. Sarah rose from the rocking chair and moved to the window, surprised to see a covered wagon pulling up in front of the house. Curious despite herself, Sarah stepped onto the porch as a woman climbed down from the wagon seat. She was perhaps 40, with streaks of gray in her dark hair and a kind face lined with years of sun and smiles. Mrs. York, the woman called, approaching the porch. I'm Hannah Wilson. I hope you don't mind me coming unannounced like this. Sarah recognized the name Mary Wilson's mother-in-law, who had moved to NACO last year to help with her grandchildren. Mr. York is at church, Sarah replied stiffly. I know, Hannah said. It's you I came to see. Reluctantly, Sarah invited the older woman inside, offering her coffee, which she gratefully accepted. They sat at the kitchen table, an awkward silence stretching between them. I'll be direct, Mrs. York, Hannah finally said. I know what you're going through. Sarah's defenses rose immediately. With all respect, Mrs. Wilson, I doubt that very much. I lost 5 babies before I had my son James, Hannah said quietly, and 2 more after him. Sarah's cup froze halfway to her lips. The last one would have been a girl, Hannah continued, her weathered hands cupping her coffee mug. My husband and I had already picked her name Elizabeth, after his mother. I was 7 months along when the pain started. Nothing the doctor did could stop it. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered, recognizing the same pain in Hannah's eyes that she saw in her own mirror each morning. The women in town were cruel, though they didn't think they were being so, Hannah said. Their sympathy had barbs in it. Their prayers felt like judgment. And the whispers, she shook her head. The whispers were the worst. Why are you telling me this? Sarah asked. Because someone should have told me, Hannah answered simply. Someone should have said that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't being punished, that there was nothing wrong with me as a woman or a wife. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. How did you bear it? 1 day at a time, Hannah said. Sometimes 1 hour at a time. And with my husband beside me, just as you have yours. But you eventually had your son, Sarah pointed out. What if I never, my dear, Hannah interrupted gently. Having James didn't heal the hurt of losing the others. It gave me joy, yes, but the grief remained its own separate thing. And if James had never come along, my husband and I would have built a different kind of life together, but still a good one. Hannah reached across the table and covered Sarah's hand with her own. The women in this town, they don't understand. They've never walked this path. But I have, and I'm telling you that you will find your way forward, whatever that looks like. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt something stir within her, not hope, exactly, but perhaps the possibility of hope. The knowledge that someone else had endured this pain and survived it made her own burden feel fractionally lighter. When Sam returned from church, he found Sarah and Hannah sitting on the porch, talking quietly. The faintest ghost of a smile touched Sarah's lips as she looked up at him, and Sam felt his heart lift. Hannah Wilson became a regular visitor to the York Ranch after that, sometimes bringing her young grandchildren along. Watching Sarah with the children, Sam saw glimpses of his wife, returning the lightness in her laugh, the warmth in her eyes. Spring turned to summer, and summer to fall. The ranch kept them both busy, cattle to tend, crops to harvest, repairs to make before winter set in. Sam noticed that Sarah had begun keeping a journal, writing in it each evening by lamplight. He never asked to read it, respecting her privacy, but sometimes she would read passages aloud to him, working through her grief 1 word at a time. When winter came, bringing snow to the mountains and chilly nights that required extra blankets, they found themselves drawn closer together physically and emotionally. The raw wound of their loss had begun to scar over, not gone, but no longer bleeding at every touch. One snowy evening in December, as they sat before the fire, Sarah closed her journal and looked at Sam. I want to try again, she said quietly. Sam set aside the bridle he'd been mending and met her gaze. Are you sure? Sarah nodded. I'm still afraid, she admitted. I don't know if I can bear another loss. But I'm more afraid of living the rest of our lives wondering what might have been. Sam moved to kneel before her chair, taking her hands in his. Whatever happens, we face it together. But Sarah, if it doesn't happen for us, if children aren't in our future, I need you to know that's all right too. You're still my home. You always will be. You're mine too, she whispered, leaning forward to press her forehead against his. That night, they came together as husband and wife for the first time since losing the baby. Their lovemaking was gentle, almost reverent, both of them aware of the risk they were taking, the hope they were allowing themselves to feel again. Afterwards, as Sarah lay in the circle of Sam's arms, she felt a strange peace settle over her. Whatever came next, she would face it with this man beside her, this man who had proven that his love wasn't conditional on her ability to give him children. Spring returned to Arizona territory, bringing wildflowers to the rangeland and new calves to the York herd. Sarah had started helping Hannah Wilson with her charitable work in town, providing food and clothing to families in need. Though some of the women still whispered when she passed, Sarah found she could bear it now, their words no longer cutting as deeply. On a warm May morning, as Sarah worked in her vegetable garden, she felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She sat back on her heels, pressing a dirt-smudged hand to her forehead. The feeling passed quickly, but returned the next day and the next. When her monthly time didn't come, Sarah hardly dared to hope. She said nothing to Sam, unwilling to raise his hopes only to dash them again. But when another month passed with the same symptoms, she could no longer deny the possibility. She rode into town alone, her heart pounding as she entered Dr. Miller's office. "Mrs. York," he greeted her, surprise evident in his voice. "What brings you in today?" "I think I might be." Sarah couldn't bring herself to say the word. "Dr. Miller's expression softened with understanding. "Let's have a look at you." The examination was brief, but thorough. When it was done, Dr. Miller sat across from Sarah, his kind eyes meeting hers. "You're about 3 months along, Mrs. York," he confirmed. "The baby seems to be developing normally." Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched her skirt. "What are the chances?" "That this time." "I won't lie to you," Dr. Miller said gently. "Given your history, there are risks. But many women have healthy babies after multiple losses. I want you to rest as much as possible, avoid heavy lifting, and come see me every few weeks so I can monitor your progress." Sarah nodded, tears of mingled joy and fear tracking down her cheeks. "Would you like me to send for your husband?" Dr. Miller asked. "No," Sarah replied, wiping her tears. "I want to tell him myself." She rode home slowly, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. Sam was mending a fence in the south pasture when she arrived. He straightened as he saw her approach, shading his eyes against the sun. "You're back early," he said as she reined her horse to a stop beside him. "Everything all right in town?" Sarah slid from the saddle into his waiting arms, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he must feel it. "Sam," she said, looking up into his concerned face. "I went to see Dr. Miller today." Alarm flashed across his features. "Are you sick? What's wrong?" Sarah took his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. "Nothing's wrong," she whispered. "I'm with child." Sam froze, his eyes searching hers. "You're certain?" Sarah nodded. "Dr. Miller says I'm about 3 months along." A range of emotions crossed Sam's face: joy, fear, hope, caution. "Sarah," he breathed, pulling her close. "That's wonderful news, but are you all right? How do you feel about this?" "I'm terrified," she admitted against his chest. "But I'm ready to try again. To hope again." Sam held her tighter. "Whatever happens," he promised, "we'll face it together." The following months were a delicate balance between cautious hope and nagging fear. Sarah followed Dr. Miller's instructions to the letter, resting more than she thought necessary, allowing Sam to take over many of her usual chores. Hannah Wilson visited regularly, bringing small gifts for the baby and quiet reassurance for Sarah. When Sarah began to show, the whispers in town changed tenor. Some expressed genuine happiness for the Yorks. Others bet among themselves about whether this pregnancy would end like the others. Sam shielded Sarah from the worst of it, but she wasn't oblivious. "Let them talk," she told Sam one evening as they sat on the porch swing. "Their words can't hurt this baby." Sam placed his hand on her growing belly, marveling at the firm roundness of it. "You're the strongest person I know, Sarah York," he said softly. "Have I told you that lately?" As summer turned to fall, Sarah passed the point where she'd lost her previous pregnancies. Each day that the baby continued to grow felt like a small victory. When she felt the first fluttering movements within her, she wept with joy, placing Sam's hand on her belly so he could feel them too. "Hello there, little one," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We're waiting for you. Take your time, grow strong." October brought cooler weather and heightened anticipation. Dr. Miller visited the ranch weekly now, pleased with Sarah's progress, but cautioning that the final weeks were still critical. "The baby has shifted," he told them after one examination. "It's in the proper position for birth. Everything looks as it should." Sarah nodded, afraid to fully embrace the hope that blossomed within her. She'd come so close before, only to have it all slip away. That night, as she prepared for bed, Sarah caught Sam watching her from the doorway, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" she asked. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "I want you to know something," he said earnestly. "If anything happens, if things go wrong, my love for you won't change. You're still my home, Sarah. You always will be." Tears welled in her eyes as she recognized his fear, the same fear that lived in her own heart. "I know," she whispered. "And you're mine." November brought the first frost, and, with it, the first pains. Sarah was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, when the initial cramps seized her. She gripped the edge of the table, breathing through it the way Hannah had taught her. When Sam came in from the barn, he found her leaning against the table, her face pale. "Is it time?" he asked, crossing to her immediately. Sarah nodded, unable to speak as another contraction built. Sam helped her to their bedroom, sent their ranch hand into town for Dr. Miller, and began preparing the things they'd set aside for this moment. The labor progressed steadily through the day and into the night. Dr. Miller arrived, checked Sarah's progress, and assured them both that everything was proceeding normally. Hannah Wilson came too, bringing her years of experience and calm presence to the birthing room. As dawn broke on the second day, Sarah's strength began to flag. The contractions came relentlessly now, her body working to bring their child into the world. "I can't do this," she gasped after a particularly brutal pain. "Yes, you can," Sam insisted, wiping her brow with a cool cloth. "You're the strongest woman I know, remember? The baby is coming now," Dr. Miller announced. "Sarah, when the next pain comes, I need you to push with all your might." Sarah gathered her remaining strength, gripping Sam's hand so tightly her nails left half-moon impressions in his palm. She bore down with the next contraction, a primal cry tearing from her throat. "That's it," Dr. Miller encouraged. "I can see the head. One more big push." With a final, monumental effort, Sarah felt the baby slip from her body. For one terrible moment, silence filled the room, and then a lusty cry split the air. "A boy," Dr. Miller announced, laying the squalling infant on Sarah's chest. "A healthy baby boy." Sarah stared down at the tiny red face, unable to believe that after all their losses, all their grief, their son was finally here alive, breathing, perfect. Sam leaned over them both, tears streaming unashamedly down his face as he touched his son's tiny hand with one gentle finger. "He's beautiful," Sam whispered, his voice breaking. "You're both so beautiful." As Dr. Miller tended to Sarah and Hannah helped clean and wrap the baby, Sam perched on the edge of the bed, unwilling to move more than a few inches from his wife and son. "What shall we name him?" Sarah asked, cradling the now quiet infant against her breast. Sam thought for a moment, then smiled. "What about Thomas? After your father?" Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Thomas Samuel York," she said, trying the name out. "It's perfect." 3 days later, Sam drove the wagon carefully into town, Sarah seated beside him with Thomas bundled securely in her arms. They had business at the land office updating their will to include their son, but Sarah knew this trip was about more than legal paperwork. It was about facing the town that had witnessed her grief, that had whispered behind her back, that had sometimes seemed to take a perverse pleasure in her pain. As they pulled up in front of the land office, Sarah saw Mrs. Peterson and several other women standing outside the general store. Their conversation halted as they spotted the York wagon, their eyes tracking Sarah as Sam helped her down. The baby chose that moment to fuss, his cry carrying clearly in the crisp November air. Sarah adjusted the blanket, revealing Thomas's face to the curious onlookers. Mrs. Peterson approached hesitantly, her expression uncertain. "Mrs. York," she said stiffly, "congratulations on your son." "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "Would you like to meet Thomas?" Something shifted in the older woman's face, perhaps recognition of the grace being extended to her, perhaps simple maternal interest in a new baby. She stepped closer, peering down at Thomas's tiny face. "He has your eyes," Mrs. Peterson observed. "And Mr. York's chin, I think." "He does," Sarah agreed, feeling Sam's supportive presence beside her. Other women approached then, cooing over the baby, offering belated congratulations. Sarah accepted their words with quiet dignity, neither seeking their approval nor showing any lingering resentment for their past cruelty. "You handled that beautifully," Sam murmured as they continued on to the land office. "I'm not sure I could have been so gracious." "They don't matter," Sarah replied simply. "Not anymore." Their business concluded, they stopped at Hannah Wilson's house before heading back to the ranch. The older woman welcomed them with open arms, tears in her eyes as she held Thomas for the first time. "He's perfect," she said, gently rocking the infant. "Absolutely perfect. We want you to be his godmother," Sarah told her. "If you're willing." Hannah looked up, surprise and joy mingling on her face. "I would be honored," she said. "More than you know." As they prepared to leave, Hannah pulled Sarah into a tight embrace. "I told you you'd find your way forward," she whispered. "And what a beautiful path it is." The ride home was quiet. Thomas sleeping peacefully in Sarah's arms, the late autumn sun casting long shadows across the rangeland. As their house came into view, Sarah felt a surge of gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "What is it?" Sam asked, noticing her emotion. "I was just thinking about how much has changed in a year," Sarah said. "Last winter, I thought my heart would never heal. I couldn't imagine finding joy again." Sam reached over and took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. "And now?" Sarah looked down at their sleeping son, then back at her husband. "Now I understand what you meant all those months ago, about being home to each other. It wasn't just words to comfort me, was it? It was the truth." "It was," Sam confirmed, his eyes full of love. "It is." As they pulled up to their house, the home they'd built together, the home that would now ring with a child's laughter, Sarah felt the last of her old grief transform into something new. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but woven into the stronger fabric of who they had become together. "You're still my home, Sam York," she said softly, echoing the words that had sustained her through the darkest days. "You and Thomas both." Sam leaned over and pressed a gentle kiss to her lips, then another to his son's forehead. "And you're ours," he replied, "now and always." As they carried their son inside, crossing the threshold into their future together, Sarah knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced the past together, bound by a love that had withstood grief's sharpest test and emerged stronger for the trial. The whispers in town would fade. The pain of their losses would never disappear completely, but it would continue to soften with time. And their family, whether it grew larger or remained just the three of them, would be built on the foundation of a love that had proven itself in the darkest of times. They were home to each other, and that, Sarah now understood, had always been enough.